This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. If you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have invited to join me Mr. Walter Bosley. Hello, Walter.
Hello. Good to be back.
And I wanted to get your take on a bunch of different stuff that's been going on, because I feel like you're in a key position to actually understand this a lot better than a lot of the people out there talking about it, including myself, because you've worked as, was it CIA?
No, I was not an employee of the CIA. I worked for the FBI.
FBI, okay.
Yeah, counterintelligence specialist, really. I had two specialist positions in the counterintelligence operations arena with them. And then, of course, I was a special agent with the Air Force OSI running counter-espionage operations.
So you are pretty much the person who would know how all this stuff works.
To the extent that it's stuff that I have personal experience with, yeah. And I spent many years, after the Air Force, I was in counterterrorism for 6 years, working all over the world. So I spent about the better part of 18 years in the national security intelligence, specifically the intelligence community. So
everything but the CIA is what you're saying?
I was not an employee of the CIA.
The one I pick is the one that you're not involved with.
The irony.
So
I didn't say I wasn't involved, because when you're running double agent operations like I was for the Air Force, when you do anything in the community, there is CIA involvement to one degree or another if it's an international scope, So
one of the things I always find interesting about this is that if you're saying stuff that people want to hear, it's, he was in the he was involved with all this stuff. If you're saying stuff they're not, it's like, it's disinfo. No, he's lying.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, people do that all the time, to not just me, but to others out there. And you nailed it, your description.
So in that greater scheme, why should people trust what you have to say about all this stuff?
Well, I could say, trust me because Uncle Sam trusted me with a beyond TSSCI security clearance for years and years. I could say trust me because I am a, military officer in active reserve, honorably discharged from active duty. I could say trust me because, the FBI did, and I could say because I don't lie, because I'm an honest broker in, the things I research and in the things that we're interested in. But that's just me saying it. And, there are admittedly too many guys out there that are saying, I was this happened, and just believe me, just trust me, because another guy who makes the same wild claims tells you can trust me. But I would say, use your judgment. I would say to the listener, use your own objective, honest judgment. Try to set aside your prejudices that everybody connected with the government is an evil villain. I would say look at my works and, see where I openly admit when I'm speculating, and I footnote or reference the things that I present as facts and things like that. So, it's up to the individual.
Yeah. Well, people will always be like, well, once they're in there, they never come out honest, and, they're... But it does seem to be an individual thing, and there's plenty of people who are going to use that to make money, to lead people astray. And it may not be because the government wants them to, it's just that they can.
Yeah. So it's because, the titles and the resume are sexy. There's sexy things on there. And, they like to play it up because they like the attention. Remember, guys like me, I couldn't do what I do now for those years I was doing that. I had to be very low key. I could not be a public figure, so to speak. Couldn't do it.
Right.
And so a lot of guys get out from that, or I'm not going to say a lot of guys. I'm correcting myself. Some guys will get out of that world, and if they get into this one, for example, they love the attention. So they'll maybe let people think what they want about their background. They'll let people say, things to embellish when they know personally. I think you'll well, and you'll see from others that I'm always correcting people when they get it wrong about my past and my resume. Sometimes people will say he was an FBI agent, and I stop them. I say, no. I was a specialist for the FBI. I carried a credential. I worked on the street. I worked undercover. But I was not an agent for them. I was an agent for the Air Force. And, you'll hear me correct people with that. I do not like to claim or mislead people to think things that are not true about my professional past. And that right there, I think, is a level of verification for my honesty. Another thing is when critics of mine have requested my DD-214, I send it to them. They see a copy of it. And none of them have ever come back yet and claimed that anything on it has been falsified. If any of them do, then we'll have fun crossing that legal bridge when we come to it.
And what is that?
The DD-214 is every military veteran receives the form DD-214. It has to do with your discharge. And it's the form that shows that you've been released from active military duty. It says on there what level discharge you had, whether it's honorable or dishonorable or any variation that's not honorable is not good. Okay. And it shows your rank coming out. It shows, the basic training that you received. And from that you can glean assignments. Basically, it's the form that all veterans have that you use to prove legally that you were indeed on active military duty, that you indeed served. You use it for your VA loans to buy a house. You use it for job applications. You name it. Any for your medical. When you go sign up with the VA hospital, you have to have that. It's a very important document, and you will find that some of these guys who claim to be these wild Marines on Mars, 20 and back, and there I said it, 20 and back, Mr. Good. I'll say it again, 20 and back. We'll get to that later. These guys who claim this, you ask them or you look for their DD-214 and it's nowhere to be seen. And then on the occasion that you do see it, well, they always have some wild story for why nothing that would honestly reflect any kind of crazy story about being in a space force is on there. So it's a very important document.
Okay, well let's get into Corey Goode and this whole Space Force thing. It's not something I've followed all that much because it's one of those things where I took one look at it and I went, okay, this is nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. The only reason I'd like to just in the preamble here, the only reason, and I've backed off on commenting on him a lot. Last year I was pretty fired up, and the only reason I got fired up is a lot of people don't know this. In 2015. I was invited to speak at the Secret Space Program conference that was held in Bastrop, Texas. Okay. There had been one the year before in San Mateo, California, the Secret Space Program. And in 2015, for about a month or so leading up to the event, people associated with the event and, speakers and stuff were hearing about this campaign of how come Corey Goode's not invited to speak at this? How come Corey Goode's not invited? How can you have a secret space program conference without Corey Goode? Now, at the time, Corey Goode was not as known as he is now. which is still relative. I mean, you ask the average person out there, they don't know who this guy is. But within our community, Corey Goode was a name that was you might have heard. Most people didn't know who he was. And as we got closer to the event, somebody discovered that one of these Corey Goode pushers had taken the graphics for the event we were speaking at and tweaked them a little bit and used them to promote Corey Goode and David Wilcock. Okay. And they, at the last minute, threw together an event, which when ours ended on Sunday, I believe November 1st, theirs started on Monday, November 2nd, and it was mostly an online conference. Well, we were hearing about this, how can you have a secret space program, without Corey Goode being in attendance? So they steal the graphics. Somebody associated with them steals the graphics. And then on the first day of the event, it was a Saturday, Sunday thing for the speakers. The first day of the event, when we had our closing panel and we opened up the floor to questions from the audience, the very first person who stood up, I see her now in my head, she stands up and she brings up Corey Goode. So there we had people in the social media pushing him relative to this event. And I'll explain why he was not even considered for the event in a minute. Then we have not just her, but another person in the audience brings him up. So they sent their ringers. And I say ringers because this young woman who was there, I later, several months later, recognized her in a Blue Sphere Alliance, I believe it was, video, where she was at Mount Shasta at a retreat with Corey Goode, and I believe Wilcock was there too. So she's a crony of Corey Goode and Wilcock's, and she shows up the first day, was not there the second day. I'm firmly convinced her whole reason for being there was to stand up and invoke his name at the event, her and the other person. And we basically, all of us on the panel, the speakers that day, who were myself, Dr. LaViolette, Joseph Farrell, Jay Dyer, and I think Brandenburg was part of the panel. John Brandenburg that first day, if I'm not mistaken. But we basically addressed the issue of what we called the so-called whistleblowers, and I say that with quotation marks, and the storytellers. And the guy running the event actually came up and got on the mic for a minute to explain why Corey Goode and his ilk were not invited. And that's because you heard those names I listed. Whether you agree with our theories or not, okay, Brandenburg, LaViolette, Joseph Farrell, Jay Dyer, and myself, we don't do the kind of nonsense, and it is nonsense, that Wilcock and Goode, are known to purvey. We attempt to do some type of scholarly research and present our sources. This secret space program event series that was going on, and Texas was the second one, this was a series that brought together people who, are professional scholars and try to approach secret space program research and investigation from a scholarly approach, a real world, here's the evidence kind of approach. Guys like Corey Goode, David Wilcock, Emery Smith, Bill Tompkins, rest his soul, but I think his story was nonsense. I think it was an older guy just having fun, or just sadly mistaken about some things. I mean, these kind of people, they just don't fit in with a serious, Basiago too, he's one of them. They do not fit in with any attempt at serious research. And that's why they weren't even considered. That's why Corey Goode was not even considered to speak at this event. Now, of course, he got his way later, he and all those, and they are knuckleheads who I just named. MUFON gave them a stage, which was, wow. I think that was the last nail in their coffin for any remote chance of being taken seriously anymore. Yeah. It was, what happened was after 2015, that's when Wilcock and Goode were the two that swooped in, and every spotlight there was to be had on anything to do with secret space program, the topic, these guys went in and through their contacts and the money behind them, they basically got it all. Coast to Coast, of course, loves their type,
right?
And gave them a spotlight, but they got the big spotlight at things like Contact in the Desert and all that. You could argue that if you're a serious researcher, let them have that, because those venues are, just not serious. Even though there are some serious guys who have spoken at it, it's a mixed bag. So basically, they came in, and because of their wider contacts in our community's media, they basically just kind of swooped in to take as much, if not all, of the spotlight. And within a year, you mentioned the term secret space program, and it was those guys. People referred to those guys because, unfortunately, and this was unfortunate timing, the guys from the Netherlands who were running these secret space program conferences, the serious ones, the good ones, which you can find online, by the way, they were unable to follow up with their third one in 2016. I think if they had been able to follow through and continue with a serious secret space program conference, these guys would not have successfully derailed any, the serious secret space program research and investigation the way they have. They've really taken it off on a spur into nutty land, where now it's kind of, unfortunately, for the last couple of years, it's been there with them, and people have finally kind of got tired of them, and actually their interpersonal relationships have fallen apart in certain ways, and they're kind of imploding on themselves. Now most people don't take any of Corey Goode's stuff seriously, but he has gone off and apparently trademarked the terms SSP and secret space program. And I can't comment to the extent I would love to, because I still want to see the details on how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Now, if he has copyrighted and trademarked his own product, well, that's fine. That's, everyone's got a right to do that. But, it looks like and kind of smells like this is a cynical, desperate shot at controlling the narrative. We're just going to have to see how he throws this around, if he tries to prevent people from using those terms and talking about them relative to him.
When with David Wilcock, when I first heard stuff from David Wilcock, I think it was on Coast to Coast, and it would be like, the first hour of conversation, I'd be like, well, this guy's kind of interesting. And by the third hour, I was like, whoa, what happened between the first and third hour here?
Yeah. Yeah, his confidence in what he was selling expanded with each hour, is what it is. There's been some interesting things. He's had his, I guess he had a big dramatic meltdown. I can't remember whose show it was. I don't recall if it might have been with Carrie Cassidy. And I think you can look that up, where he's convinced somebody's out to kill him, and he breaks down crying and his life is in danger. And he ran with that theme for, I think, a couple of years, and then backed off of it. And then he got in with Corey Goode and was really pushing Corey Goode. And that's when they came up with this dark cabal, of which I'm apparently indirectly, through my association with other people who are named on the list, which I kind of wear as a badge of honor. I would love to get a Dark Cabal T-shirt and just wear it to one of their events. But, crazy stuff like that. And anybody who contradicted or pointed out the nonsense or criticized what their whole thing about blue avians and all, the Corey Goode being an intergalactic ambassador, for crying out loud, they were immediately labeled the Dark Cabal. And these guys know what they're doing. They're flim-flam men. Until they prove otherwise, I'm saying they are con men. They're entertainers. They're pushing a false narrative. Until they prove otherwise, it can certainly be said. And, they know that they're playing to their audience. Unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of people out there with disposable income in their pockets who want to hear fantasy stories because it's, maybe their new religion or their substitute for religion, whatever it is, and they're willing to throw dollars at guys like this. And that's why Wilcock and Goode and their ilk are actually doing this. It's for attention and ultimately, hopefully, dollars.
Do you think they believe any of it?
If they believe any of it, then that's for a psychiatric professional to comment upon. Now I'm saying that knowing that full well I'm on record out there discussing extraordinary paranormal things that I'm convinced of. Mm-hmm. But notice the difference in my presentation. These guys, present what they're saying in a completely different way. There's nothing speculative about what they say. It's always the gosh honest truth, and they can vouch for it because they have buddies spouting the same stuff who can vouch for them. I mean, it's ridiculous. Their little circle of verification, which are just people in the same scam that they're in, and people buy this. But
one person lies, the other swears to it.
Yeah, exactly. I think to answer that is an interesting question, though. That's why I'm, kind of still commenting that, okay, to some degree, there are probably guys who are into this stuff, like any of us. And to some degree, they probably have certain ideas that they've embraced, like all of us. Who knows? Maybe they've had, a nugget or a kernel of a type experience that they've exaggerated upon or whatever. But as far as their narrative on the Blue Sphere Alliance and the Blue Avians, which, by the way, they changed all that when that took heat. And they came up with these other triangle heads or something.
Really?
I'm going to say until they prove otherwise, no, I don't think they believe this narrative they're pushing about Corey being a galactic ambassador. What they're doing is pushing a comic book he wants to sell. Well, what they're doing is pushing a movie idea, hopefully a TV series idea. Okay? Nothing wrong with selling your material to TV. I just optioned mine. But let's look at the difference. What I just optioned was material that the most recent book in the trilogy was written and published in 2014. Okay, that's over 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay, the first book was 2011. I didn't go into this from the beginning with, hey, I got a great idea for a movie. I'll write these books about this sinister occult weirdness going on and just really build up the drama. And from the get-go say, and by the way, here's the comic book. And here, no. The first producer I ever talked to about Empire of the Wheel was a little over a year ago. And the one I optioned it to was the second producer who just contacted me this spring. Now, when you look at what Goode and Wilcock are doing, it looks like it started as a movie and TV show and comic book idea. And then all their behavior, with secret space program conferences and pushing themselves onto everybody else and pushing themselves onto the stage to get the spotlight, it just looks, like a cynical vaudeville act.
Huh. And can you say the same thing about To the Stars to a degree? Because they kind of came up with all this and then immediately were like, we want to make movies.
Well, to me, the difference, and isn't it an interesting juxtaposition? I want to lay out something here for you. I'm glad you brought this up because for years we had some researchers, I think dating back to the early 2000s, middle 2000s. We had researchers like Catherine Austin Fitz, Joseph Farrell, John Brandenburg, Paul LaViolette, and these others that I've named, Mark McCandlish, Michael Schratt, who were they were on the trail of, the idea that there was, there was a secret space program. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they were doing serious, scholarly, investigative type reporting. Okay. Now, by 2014, some guys have realized we need to bring all these serious investigative scholars together in one place so they can present their data, they can present their research. And that was the first secret space program. This is the title of it, the Secret Space Program Conference. Okay. And they did the first one in San Mateo, and it was fantastic. Chris Carter from the X-Files was there, by the way, when he was formulating the first return season. I think that's season 11 or whatever it was, or 10. But there were serious researchers there, and it was a success. So they did the next one in Texas that I told you about before. Right. And it was an even bigger success because they even put more people in seats at this one than they did in 2014. And there were many, many more people online, viewing it online. And there had been a lot in 2014 watching it online. So here we had some serious scholarly researchers investigating this issue for a few years already. Then we have 2 successful conferences in a row with these serious investigative scholars. And at the second one, we see the emergence. We've seen the emergence of Corey Goode in the preceding months, and suddenly he's trying to impose himself onto this group's stage. He's not welcome because he's not a serious researcher in any way. And then we see in the following year, when these guys can't put on another event, what happened was, even though the event was successful, they did another event that tanked. And kind of sucked up their budget, unfortunately. And what that did was that left a void for Goode and Wilcock. Now, Goode and Wilcock come in with the zany vaudeville act of the Blue Sphere Alliance and the Blue Avians and all the nonsense, the 20 and back nonsense. And they're not the only ones, but they're the big stars in that weird world, okay? And they have the spotlight for about a year strongly, okay? And what does that do? From this perspective I'm setting up, that casts a pall of silliness on the topic of secret space program. That overshadows the serious investigative research and the progress being made truly towards exposing this secret space program. Okay, and then after they have their year of silly season, making the term secret space program associated with nonsense, then boom, here comes TTSA. They jump out on the scene, okay? And they aren't the silly vaudeville act. They're former government guys. Still, to be more specific, they're former CIA guys. And, of course, what do we have? We have Tom DeLonge, who I have no doubt is sincerely fascinated with these subjects. I do not doubt his sincerity, but I think it's my opinion that he and his vision were co-opted and being used by some of the CIA guys or whoever in the intel community needed to after Goode and Wilcock kind of cast silliness on the subject of secret space program. Now TTSA could come in and control the narrative. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what, this is my personal opinion, but I think that's what's behind TTSA as an organization. The minute I heard that Kit Green of the CIA and this, Luis Elizondo, a former CIA guy, and the minute I heard all that, I thought, oh, of course. And what amazes me is, and this is where the younger guys who are the fanboys, I call them, of TTSA, the new generation of, UFO community guys, this is where their ignorance shows, okay? Because they're ready to embrace these CIA guys where, in the past, if you would have said you were a CIA guy involved with a UFO group, nobody would have trusted you. And for good reason, okay? Dating back to MK Ultra and the MJ-12 debacle, MJ-12 papers debacle and all that, okay? But now all of a sudden we're supposed to embrace and trust CIA guys. I find it interesting that, Kit Green, for example, and I've never met the man, okay? But he was, prominently mentioned in the film and the book Mirage Men, which I also am in, okay? But the angle of Mirage Men is the guys who made that film clearly do not like and have it out for U.S. military intelligence and counterintelligence organizations. Okay, it's clear. But they loved Kit Green of the CIA. So, to me, that should tell you something. People ask me about Mirage Men. I say, well, yeah, they presented what I said. There I am saying it. I have, no problem with my appearance in that film. I have issues with the book. The book characterized some things that were really not accurate and put a spin on things. But, even with, this questionable stuff in the past, we're supposed to suddenly embrace these CIA guys. Suddenly they're our friends. Suddenly they want the truth known. And it's just interesting how the stuff then that they start releasing after their press conference has just been laughed at and shot down so often. Think about that. This Tic Tac video, this was not an ET craft, folks. It was, most likely some type of drone technology or something. And I know they point to Commander Fravor, I think is his name. He's one of these hotshot jock fighter pilots. If I didn't know about it, it didn't exist. It wasn't ours. Yeah, okay. Okay, Mr. Naval Aviator. We balls of steel, we get it. You're the man. But from my perspective, Air Force officer, OSI agent, very much involved with program protection. Yeah, I stand by what I said. Just because you're a hotshot Navy fighter jock does not mean that you are briefed in and aware of every aerial platform, as we call them, that the Navy might be possessing or testing. And so people get misled by Fravor and guys like that because, they're fighter pilots, they're veterans, they're, military officers and such. Well, it's very misleading when they just confidently and real cocky come out and say, well, if they didn't know about it, it wasn't ours. That's silly. Anybody from my perspective in that world just laughs and says, oh, that's silly. That's their ego talking. But that's who they marched out to back that up. And then other things, the one photo that turned out to be that Mylar balloon, that made them look foolish. And then Tom DeLonge posting the Billy Meyer beam ship, I think they're called the Billy Meyer flying saucers, and really implying that, there's something to this, when Billy Meyer has been soundly discredited. Sorry, Michael Horn, but that's tough. That's just the way it is. Was Tom DeLonge set up to be made to look foolish? Is this another way of discrediting public interest for anything to do with secret space program related stuff, even though TTSA, hasn't directly, attacked that issue? I don't think. It could be. Here's what I see. TTSA, in my opinion, what I suspect at this point is an organization where they've got an earnest guy who's was kind of the figurehead of it, and it's something that in the background they can use to try to manage perception, to control the narrative about UFOs and such, because these things are our classified technology, or at least the extent to which the intel agencies would be involved with TTSA is to make sure that they control the narrative so these things remain as classified as possible, protected, in other words. So that's what I think is going on with TTSA to a degree. And other than that, I just think it's, whether it's being mismanaged or not, I just think that it's just an idea, the corporate idea, the model they chose just isn't going to work. And, I said the other day, I would like to see the media entertainment part of TTSA that I think was DeLong's original vision, honestly. I'd like to see that succeed because, he's talking fiction, novels, he's talking, TV series, he's talking movies and even the music. But, hey, the market is wide enough for any UFO movies, TV shows, books you want to put out there, and you can explore legitimate ideas in this entertainment. I would really like to see that part of it succeed. For him also, but they could put out a lot of cool stuff in that regard. But this regard that he's privy to real secrets, I think he's being led down a primrose path by the intelligence agencies.
Okay. All right. And what I don't think helped him too was going on Joe Rogan and just being
high as a kite.
Yeah, all over the place. And then, saying things like, all those videos you see on YouTube, they're all real. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Really? All the YouTube videos are real?
Somebody else pointed out, I don't recall if it was who it was. If it was, can I say other guys' names on
Sure.
Here? Yeah, I don't recall if it was Joe from Carolinas or Chris Zuger over at Denalore or C.W. Chan or whoever it was, but somebody pointed out that what I just lost what they pointed out. I'm having a senior moment. What were we talking about?
We were talking about his appearance on the Joe Rogan show and saying that all the YouTube was real.
Yeah, somebody pointed out, thank you. Gosh, how did I lose that? Good Lord, Walter. Maybe not enough coffee today. They pointed out that after that appearance, if you'll notice that, and I think one other thing he might have said publicly, that he has kind of pulled back and Luis Elizondo became kind of more out front for the organization. So credit to whichever one of you guys, if you're listening, said, was the one who said that where I saw it. But, so that's possible. Maybe he did kind of make himself look silly and the organization said, that's not good. We can't have that. So, something funny is going on there. Definitely something funny in the not good way. And, that's just my opinion that it's what's behind it is perception management, controlling the narrative on UFOs.
And whose advantage is that to, I guess is what I want to ask.
Department of Defense and our military. Okay, now I'm going to put my OSI hat on here, my Air Force officer hat. I should go grab it. It's on the shelf right over there. Put my wheel cap on. Look, controlling that narrative is highly beneficial to an Air Force or any branch of service that has an aeronautical defense aspect. And you want, if we've got some super zingy Aurora flying saucer Mondo fighter bomber up there that's astounding, we want to be able, should we, God forbid, have to go into open warfare, we want to be able to spring that on the enemy in a way that just shocks them, in a way that they don't know how to react, and that gives us the time to put them down, to kill them. And so from the perspective, as a military officer, I totally get why they would do this, want to control the UFO narrative. If serious researchers have been getting, now remember, let's go back. I said we had serious researchers working for, a decade, and they were starting to get attention by being, the stars of these conferences, these serious conferences. They were starting to get interviewed more than they are lately. And along comes the vaudeville show of Wilcock and Goode to slap some goofy mud on the topic. And then that's followed up immediately by TTSA, which I propose is the narrative control organization. Okay, so if you had these secret space program guys who were serious researchers getting a little too close to things out there, okay, then what you want is to derail that effort. And the first thing you do is put a immediate roadblock up. That's the silly vaudeville act that Wilcock and Goode, brought to the table. Whether they were aware of it or not, I think if you look closely behind the push to give those guys the spotlight, you might find some of the same players behind the TTSA. Okay, if you look close enough, that's my guess. So, you put that roadblock up to the serious researchers for a year, and then boom, for the next year, you introduce your TTSA. Oh, we're the government. We're here to help you. We believe in UFOs too. And so there you go. You see, I think the Wilcock and Goode Vaudeville Act and TTSA were both pushed to emerge as a way to put a stop to the serious secret space program research that had been making traction before them.
Okay. And the first time I saw the tic-tac-toe thing, that had been out. That wasn't even like a new video that they released. That had been on the internet years ago.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, they come out with this stuff like it's the hot new thing, and you're like, hey, wait a minute,
They and to me, I went back and forth with this with a number of people, but the whole New York Times announcement, I don't think made a substantial difference in anything.
Oh, and they go on, and you personally know one of the fanboys who they just go on and gush over New York Times. I got into a discussion with a particular individual over this New York Times being the first time the mainstream media. So I took a half hour, just 30 minutes, and I found numerous major newspaper, including the New York Times, articles on UFOs talking about it just as prominently as the Tic Tac video article, okay, dating back to, I think, even the 1950s and through the 60s and 70s. And I just stopped after the 70s because I made my point, whether that individual accepted it or not. And that's what I'm talking about, the ignorance of the new generation. Now, this brings up another thing, though. I do think a lot of these TTSA fanboys, they're just ignorant of the real history of UFO research in the community, okay? And they need to get caught up before they talk anymore because they're kind of making themselves look silly. But embedded, make no mistake, embedded within these TTSA fanboy little community are astroturfed guys who are not fools, guys who know darn well that this kind of stuff has been looked at before and who do know the history. And these are the guys who would be the fine-tuners and manipulators of the narrative. Okay? Tom DeLonge, I will say this, as somebody who worked in counter-espionage, intelligence-type operations, and these kinds of things, DeLonge's whole thing has the earmarks of somebody who's being handled. I would right now I'd venture to say unwitting. He thinks he's brought in. He was shown some stuff. He claims he got his back patted and he was told, "Oh, you're so clever and smart. Yeah, you're really onto real things." That is classic asset handling. When you want to butter somebody up, and he was buttered up. They brought him in and they slathered butter on him front and back, and he lapped it up. And so they say, and you're going to be the famous face of this, and oh golly, and the poor guy, because he's sincere, about these topics. He just let them spoon feed him. So I think TTSA is an operation. Ultimately, behind it all is an operation in which they are using DeLong as an unwitting asset. They're using his vision to fit in their narrative control function. They're in whatever other operations they're. I mean, think about it. You have Kit Green's a psychiatrist, so imagine all the wonderful MK Ultra-esque data and things he can do with TTSA. Okay, you got Hal Puthoff, one of the guys who developed scientific remote viewing. Think of all the delightful psychological data that he can get his hands on and enjoy. Although I do think some of these guys, like maybe Puthoff and some of the other ones, they're getting up there in years. They're in their golden retirement kind of zone. And to a degree, some of them probably got involved with this thinking, this will be a fun thing to be involved with in my last years of being active. Maybe I'll make a little money. But, it's just if you look at it from my perspective, it does look like there's something operational going on here with them.
And I believe, oh my God, I just blanked on his name. Radio Mysterioso.
Oh, good. I'm not the only one who's blanking, and you're younger than me, so I feel better. Greg Bishop.
Yes, I only blank on names I need. Greg had said that a number of the guys in TTSA were a part of the aviary as well.
Ah, yes, that's right. I've had that chat with him.
Which, basically implies that these guys were disinfo before, so why should we believe them now?
There you go. You have to, consider that. Just like anybody who would say, well, we have to consider what Bosley's saying. He was in that dastardly Air Force OSI. We can't trust him, because their particular version of Rick Doty represents all of OSI. And notice I said their particular version of Doty, because as I've said before, I've said it on Greg's show, I've said it other places, none of us have seen, for us to know exactly what OSI and Doty did to or with Benowitz, none of us have seen the operational case file. And until we do, I can say until I do, there's just conclusions that I can't legitimately come to that other people have no problem coming to. I've said also before that I think that situation was really taken out of OSI's hands. And if you want to look at a culprit, I'd say look at NSA, where Benowitz is concerned.
Okay.
But everybody it's easier to beat up on Air Force OSI.
And this seems like something that gets played out every once in a while with Benowitz, with other things here and there. What's his name that they're doing the documentary on now? Who saw the UFOs in Area 51? Lazar.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, what are your thoughts on him, for instance?
I think it's very possible that he saw something, but it's also very possible that he completely, not completely, that he to a significant degree did not understand what he was seeing and probably mischaracterized it and came to conclusions that are inaccurate.
Okay.
Is it possible that he's lying and made it all up? Of course, it's possible. But, based on what I heard, I think he probably saw something. And, his extrapolations, you have to take with a grain of salt.
And that's something I don't think people take into consideration a lot of times, is that it's one thing for someone to report what they've seen. It's another thing for them to interpret it. And
yes.
I'm always interested in what people saw. And
yes,
it's like, tell me what you saw before you reasoned this all out. Like what were your first impressions? Because it may not, we fit things into the paradigms of our own experience. And if you don't have those experiences, I mean, I know when I talk to Oh, it's going to happen with every name now. Travis Walton. I had asked him, what did you remember before you got hypnotized? And he avoided the question. Now, it's been a long time since that happened for him. So, I mean, he may not even know exactly what he remembered prior to being hypnotized, but
he could have said that instead of avoiding the questions.
Right.
The problem with avoiding questions is you are bringing suspicion on your whole narrative when you do that. Address the question. Even if you can't answer it, address the fact that the question has been asked and say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that right now. I can't answer that.
And I think he also took it as like maybe I was attacking him slightly, like,
well,
why are you asking that?
Even so, he still could have politely addressed the question and then moved on to the next topic, because you got to understand that, when I go on these shows at any given time, any of you hosts can, come up with the opposing opinion or opposing point of view or the critique that's out there. And I have to be prepared for that. Now, that's you as the host. Now, what I do not tolerate, and the host of another particular show has tried to do this to me more than once, he's succeeded once, is I don't like being shanghaied with another guest who, you're told after you're on that, this guy's going to be on air, and it's for the purpose to spin you up into a debate. That stuff, that's no, I don't give that 5 minutes to happen after the first time. But when a host, the person you're being interviewed by, brings up something that might be uncomfortable for you, you still should address it, because if you avoid it, it can hurt the rest of your narrative if you're supposed to be sincere and want to get your story out there and be taken seriously. So,
but it's not gonna hurt the true believers. Like, the true believers are still gonna.
Yeah, they're always out there, of course, and they're gonna get all pissy, and cranky when you criticize their religion or their beliefs.
Yeah. I mean, it's human nature, if nothing else.
Yeah, but remember, it's definitely human nature. There are certain things about human nature that we should curb and not succumb to. But
yes.
It's definitely human nature.
And it seems like it's more that human nature is more encouraged now in the media, like splitting people into sides.
Oh my God! Yeah, in society, it's just rampant. I mean, people are out of control. You don't have to express any side you're on or declare any side you're on to acknowledge, that what's going on out there in society, and to bring it back to, what we're talking about, that goes on within our community too.
Oh yeah.
I think one of the worst things that's happened with the whole UFO thing is what it's called. I think it's exopolitics. Isn't that what got everybody fired up and radical about disclosure now? Where now even discussing UFOs and related paranormal phenomena and such, that even that in its own way is politicized. You got to be on one side or the other, or you got to be on our side or you're on the other, and it's like, really, the division when talking about flying saucers and ET is just it's destructive to any serious discussion or research, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with a lot of people, whether it be politics, social issues, or paranormal stuff, I think you find a lot more agreement than we're led to believe. It's just that we focus so much on the disagreements.
Well, no, what it is the disagreeers, the people who have a stake in the disagreement, are yelling the loudest. They're the ones stomping their feet and acting like children. And the people who are, I think the overwhelming majority of us, we don't want to behave like, little children, like petulant little children throwing a fit. Or spouting, ridiculous platitudes that come across as ignorant.
The last time I talked to someone about the whole Tic Tac video, I said I think it's probably a test craft of some sorts. I don't know that. That's my feeling on the thing. And
I think it's some type of advanced drone, personally.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would totally make sense. But that's what I mean. Something that's ours that we just don't know they have. And they spent another few minutes after that expressing to me why this video was real. And I'm like, I'm not doubting it's real. We agree it's a real video. We're disagreeing as to the importance of the video.
And what's in the video, but they don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
They just want you to be stuck on it's real, it's real, it's real.
The TTSA stuff, the videos they've released, I have no doubt they're real. You know, that's not really a question. They look real. They're nothing that isn't potentially possible with our technology. Mm-hmm. It's a little ahead of what we have, but I'm guessing the government
hold on. It's a little ahead of what we know about.
Right. When I say we have, I mean us, like you and I.
Yeah, exactly. You know what we're aware of, and and the other part of that is what you just mentioned, how they divert from what the discussion really is about, and they insist on the video's real, the video's real. But yeah, we already established that. Now we're debating what the object is, whether it's from another world or not. And what happens is you get this immediate wall of emotional reaction from them. It's, you get this, dude, why do you want to rain on the parade? Or what's the favorite one? Dude, the paradigm is shifting, man. It's the new paradigm. And you old timers, you're just a bunch of cranky guys who are haters of the new guys. And a bunch of guys who are supposed to be grown men, okay, acting like they're 15-year-olds at the schoolyard, okay? When I'm discussing, stuff like this, and I have a grown man, who maybe he's married and has a kid or something, supposed to be a serious adult, I'm a 55-year-old man, okay? When I'm in a discussion with this and I keep being called dude, I'm sorry, you've lost me, okay? It's like, okay, now let's put our grown-up pants on and speak like adults. Let's stop with the hip slang and the high school talk, and let's be serious about this. But they won't be. I bring this up because what you get, and they were astroturfed. If you'll notice, the fan base of TTSA. Now, you could point to individuals and say, well, he was around here or he was around there. But isn't it weird? And I've talked with other guys who acknowledge this and they agree with this. Isn't it weird how this TTSA fanboy base kind of just, boom, almost appeared out of nowhere, where when you tangle with one, 5 or 6 others suddenly show up on your social media coming at you like reinforcements, okay?
Really?
And it's like they were what they call astroturfed. TTSA wants to stand up, and they're ready with the astroturfed support, and I put quotation marks around that, in the community. And most of these guys are guys, I've been around a little while, and I had never heard of them, okay? And here they are, suddenly, voices supporting TTSA. Not all of them, but I suspect a percentage of them are ringers, are part of the community that's wanting to control the narrative on this. And it's very easy to plant them,
And the thing is, if the TTSA presents us with something truly phenomenal, great. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but to me it looks like the same stuff over and over. But I'm totally willing to admit I'm wrong if the evidence presents itself. Hey,
they came out with that. They came out what we would call pretty strongly. Mm-hmm. Honestly, they did, and all they've managed to do in the last year, except to the rabid true believer fanboys who are questionable to begin with for a variety of reasons, except to them, TTSA has kind of made itself look like fools, or people that use critical thinking are not buying what they're selling. Okay. So, they've been out almost a year now, and this is what they've accomplished. So either they intended to accomplish this foolishness, or, they are just another flash in the pan that gets the spotlight for a year. Ooh, everybody's talking about them. And, here's the funny thing. If TTSA goes away, but suddenly Luis Elizondo is, a media star on this reality show and that reality show, I would say he actually achieved what his honest intention was to begin with. And that was to have a new career, to leave retire from the intel community, and, be a big star on reality TV, if that's, and look at some of the others. If they end up being, stars in the UFO media world, there you go. That's probably what their personal objective was buying into this. There's nothing about, by the way, Elizondo's involvement in this and his resume that discounts him very possibly being a contractor employee for the CIA. Okay. I've retired. There are several retired CIA staffers who become contract operational employees. Okay.
And how does that work?
You become a contractor. You retire on Friday and you show up at the office on Monday, and you sign your contract, and your public face is the Acme whatever company, and the Acme whatever company may not be real, and your objective is to let's say you retire from the agency on Friday, you show up on Monday, and you sign a contract for Tom DeLonge, TTSA, and your assignment is, perception management, narrative control stuff, and your role is to be the earnest, retired CIA guy who's going to, help Tom reveal the truth to the people. Okay? And that's your role. That's your job. That's it's your real name, but it could still be your operational function.
Gotcha. Is
to be that guy. And that totally fits within the framework of how things work in the intel community. And I've said that before, but what that gets from the true believers is, it's just, that's paranoid nonsense. No, that's not paranoid nonsense. I come from the national security intel community, 18 years of it. Okay. I know how it works.
Right.
And, I do have credentials to know how that works. So,
the other thing that always strikes me with any of these things that rise up like this is they're always promising things to come. It's like, the stuff you're going to see, and it's like, and the stuff never materializes. If you have something, present it. Don't lead everyone on and ask for money. Just come out with it. Then if you want to ask for money, fine,
Particularly if you're touting yourself as the guy who wants to get the truth to the people.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break, guys. Oh, but we want to make sure we're right. Well, whoa, wait a minute. Part of your spin was that you already knew you were right.
Yeah.
And you were the guys that were going to bring it. So now you're telling me that your whole thing is just as speculative as anyone else's, and stay tuned or invest $5 a share, become a member of our whatever this, while we get our TV show idea, rolling here. Yeah, exactly.
And I got that vibe a little bit from the Skinwalker documentary at the end. I don't know if you watched it, because the same thing. It's the stuff you're going to see when this stuff comes out. It's like, don't just say that. My thing with that was, I'm not being a smart aleck here, seriously. Okay, when I would like to see. Corbell, he knows how to make a good video. Yes.
I would like to see him do a documentary, on something where there's something substantial communicated in the documentary. Skinwalker Ranch is not it. That documentary, it was just, and I'm not the first and only person to say this, it was just more storytellers, and not even in some cases, the people who saw it. It was somebody who knows the person who saw it.
I noticed
or
that.
knows the person who knows. It was however long it was, an hour and a half, 2 hours, or whatever, of more of the same hype. And, we got so much great stuff we can't show you.
Yeah.
Why bother, to make the documentary if you want to be taken seriously?
It really disappointed me. And people,
it was a big disappointment in that regard.
We had not watched it, and we decided we were going to do a show on it. And then we all sat down and watched it, and we all kind of came to the table with the same feeling of, this really wasn't good. I mean, it was a well-done documentary, but information-wise, it was the same stuff that was in the book. I mean, you got some pictures and some minor video, but like you said, I pointed that out, that there were people telling the story of other people,
Yeah, that was you. That's when you guys had Joshua Cutchin on,
yes.
right?
Yeah, it was me, Joshua, and Adam, I think.
Yeah, as you know, I listened to that later after you did it, and I even commented on it because it was an excellent episode you guys did. And you guys nailed it. It indeed was just more of the same hype. And, I'm sorry, but to tout this thing and do the big buildup, that, they should have gone to, I don't know if it's Bigelow or whoever, who wouldn't let them show all this great stuff they had that they couldn't show. They should have gone and said, look, we can't seriously do this thing unless you release some of this. Now, come on.
Yeah.
And so what did they end up with? They ended up with, once again, being no better or no more credible with this than Corey Goode or David Wilcock with their stuff, when they say, oh, yeah, we got this great stuff, but we can't show you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. I that book I thought was fantastic. It helped.
The book was really interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've always respected George Knapp. I mean, he was kind of an inspiration for the way I do interviews, where he knows the guest when he has them on, I mean, he's a great interviewer. And so, I expected the world out of this thing, and it was like disappointed. And there were a handful, most people seem to agree with our assessment of it, but there were a handful of people who were like, why'd you do this just to, to poop all over it? And I'm like, we did it because we thought it was going to be good, We can't help but be honest and tell you what we really thought. There's no agenda on my end.
I would have liked to have, they had, it's Robbie Williams, right? The singer?
Yes, I think so. I don't know who he is exactly.
Oh, yeah, he was big in the early 2000s, and especially between 2000 and 2006, I was doing a lot of international travel. So I heard and saw his videos and stuff a lot during those years, because I was always going through Europe and, Eastern Europe and just all over the world. So I'm familiar with him and have been whenever Knapp talks about him. And I essentially like the guy. I think he's sincere about stuff. But I would have liked to have, because we've heard Knapp talk about how Robbie Williams has had these experiences, but I don't recall, I don't think I've ever seen or heard something where he talks about them at length. And I would have liked to have heard those. I'll tell you a guy who's done a compelling documentary, and that's Ryan Sprague, or Sprague, however he pronounces it.
Sprague, I think.
Sprague, yeah, Ryan Sprague. I had the opportunity to meet him in Halifax at the Esotericon, hosted by Paul Kimball. And we saw segments from a documentary he did, where in one particular part he was involved with, he was talking with, and I'm trying to remember who did the research. I think Dr. Jacobs did the initial investigation on a case in Africa where a bunch of school kids in the middle of the day had an encounter with a craft.
That was the guy who passed away, got hit by a drunk driver.
Was that Mark?
I lost you.
Oh, do you hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Was that who?
Okay, was that Mark Jacobs?
No. It was, his name's on the tip of my tongue. I got a book here somewhere.
I've got Ryan's book right here.
Passport to the Cosmos, he wrote, I believe.
Okay, I've got Ryan's book right here, but I don't want to waste airtime. But anyway, Ryan interviewed. That's what it was. He interviewed for his book Somewhere in the Skies. The young woman who was one of the kids.
John Mack
interviewed. Yes, Mack. Yes, sorry about that. John Mack. Ryan interviewed, did a follow-up interview. Of course, it was years later after Mac did his research and initial interviews. And Ryan's documentary that he presented is really interesting, the interviews. And I recommend people check those out. It's the way he, let them tell their experience, the way he presented it. It just felt fresh. We see so many of these things. I just liked Ryan's. And what's great is he talked directly to the people who were having these experiences. It would have been great if maybe Corbell had, seen Ryan's thing and they would have paired up. Because, Ryan's a working writer in Hollywood stuff. He's written, I believe, an episode or two for American Horror Story or something. Yeah, he's written for.
I know he did theater.
Yeah, he's done theater, and I recommend this particular documentary, and he talks about it in his Somewhere in the Skies book. So that was more interesting to me, more compelling to me than. However, the style, being someone who's into film, I'm a cinema nut myself, have been since I was a kid, and I've been involved in filmmaking and stuff. The style of Corbell's work is, it keeps your attention visually and such. He knows how to present things dramatically. I would just like to see him, with material that is, substantial with the style, and he'll end up probably doing one of the best documentaries, in this field ever done when that happens.
So let's talk real quick, since we're starting to run low on time, about the solar observatory that got closed down and how this blew out of proportion. So what actually happened?
To my understanding, it turned out that I had in 2016 been to the neighbor site, which is still 1 mile further down the road from Sunspot, the Apache Point facility, which is another observatory. And my source has connections with state and local law enforcement, also has connections literally associated with the Sunspot Observatory. And I was hearing about this, so I reached out to him, and I got some really good info, and that it was a criminal situation that caused, the so-called evacuation. And yes, everything got conflated because they were keeping such a tight lid on it. But the reason they were I was told that it was a downloading porn issue about 2 days before that came out publicly. And I was specifically asked not to mention that in my YouTube videos before that came out. But I was told that a couple of days before. It turned out to be that. Now, I did tell one other person. I think I told Tim Banal before it came out, and I said, just as a verifier for me, so you can vouch for me, I'm going to tell you an aspect of this, swearing you to secrecy, but this is what I'm told is going to be reported. And sure enough, when it was reported, Tim can tell you, I indeed told him prior to that. Because, I will test my sources that way, and I'll make sure my butt is covered so I don't look like a fool, and in the righteous way. I think that we still don't know the whole story. Now, I got to be honest with you. I quit paying attention to this a couple of weeks or so back. So I don't know. I saw recently somebody put another video out there that has to do with alien life and suppressing. That nonsense is going on, and it will continue to go on. There will be people that say, you don't know the truth. You don't know the truth. But I think what really happened is basically, from my understanding through my sources, is that the guy, this stuff was downloaded, and there had been an ongoing investigation for a big ring of porn of that type going on in the region. And the FBI was already investigating that. And then this popped up, okay? And the story we're told that the guy panicked, you know, that's what I was told, is that the guy panicked and he was getting people spun up with BS. And the reason, everybody made a big deal about the post office being evacuated. Look, the town, so-called town of Sunspot, is practically right there on the facility, and it grew up for the people who work in this facility, because during the winter months, it's not easy to go the 20 miles down a snowy, icy mountain road to get to a post office, to get to a grocery store, to, you know. So the Sunspot community exists for and of the people who are affiliated with the Sunspot Observatory. Okay, so when they put a clamp down, and not the FBI, but the people running the observatory did an evacuation, it was more of a, hey, take your stuff and go home. We've got a situation here, and that meant, go home and shut down the post office, shut down the stores until we get a handle on this.
Yeah.
And the nature of it was such that they probably didn't want to admit what was going on initially.
And I had a listener who had been there at some point say, you know, this is not a town like everyone's thinking it's a town.
Exactly.
And so that presented a little more of a context to it. And when you're saying there's a ring, that makes more sense than just one guy downloading some child pornography.
And that's why the FBI got involved in the investigating this aspect, because it looked like it fit in with a bigger thing they were doing. Okay. Now, the issue of the helicopter, everybody, you were hearing, if you were to listen to the people, reacting to this, you would have thought a whole squadron of Apache helicopters showed up like an Apocalypse Now, when actually, from what I understand, and, one of my sources is FBI contact, it was just one helicopter. And I explained more than once to people, and a lot of them just didn't want to hear it, was when you're told that there might be some crazy psychopath on the loose up at this observatory site, you've got to get a response team up there as soon as possible, right? Now, some people said, well, they could have driven up there. I'm like, oh my God, how ignorant. I've gone up there myself personally. It takes you the better part of an hour to get from the bottom of the mountain up to, Sunspot and Apache Point, which is just a little mile away. So if you've got to get a response team, okay, and you've got a helicopter available, I guarantee you, having been in federal law enforcement and such, you're going to use that helicopter to get your guys up there. And then when they got up there, they realized, oh, this is not happening. This guy made this up, and what's going on here? And the director of the organization said, here's what we found. And here's this guy, who he is. And, the FBI, they did a stand down. They're like, okay, we'll take the laptop. We'll, and the case agent who was running the investigation of the ring, she's the one that, had the laptop and was processing that evidence. But it was ripe for the conspiracy enthusiasts to latch on to. The timing was such that, there were some other things going on that you could say, oh, it must be related to this or that. And I think until we hear otherwise, something credible, I think it was just not a comedy of errors, but it was the result of just the juxtaposition of some things. And people want to be excited all the time. This goes back to what we're talking about, what's wrong with our society. People want to be constantly on the adrenaline feed. They want to constantly be excited and agitated and in that mode. And so everything and anything is something, even when it's not. Yeah,
definitely. The other thing is that, people were saying, oh, well, all these other observatories were closed too. And when you look, yeah, exactly. When you looked more into it, it's like some of them had their web feeds down. None of them were closed. Yeah. And there were plenty of other ones that were open. Yeah. But if you kind of follow that, if you cut out the other information, you can make it look more suspicious. And I don't know if people do this intentionally.
Oh, sure. Some of them do. Yeah, I have. Look, let's be honest. There's people in our biz, our community, that, I suspect that they don't think there's anything to it, but it's good for business. It's good to go on and build it up and get that attention and have something to say. If you'll notice, I think, only 3 reports around the time it was happening. And yeah, I got the biggest spike I ever had on my YouTube channel from that. So I could have every week to this day have been doing and still doing a sunspot observatory thing, to just keep addicted to those views and that spike. But it goes back to the first question when we started. Why should people trust me? Because I'm an honest broker. I didn't continue the sunspot observatory narrative just because it gave me my biggest spike on my YouTube channel. And there's people that's what they're after. Yeah. Are the spikes and the clicks. Now, there's some people who are doing, energetic things, who are doing regular stuff on their social media, and it's legit. Okay, they're committed to that, digging things out, and they do have something substantial and legit to talk about every week or whatever. You guys get this. You have a show. And I'm not saying everybody who's doing that is just, a shyster who's spinning things up that's not true. But there's some of them who, are, or they're letting themselves get carried away with the what ifs. And
the wants to believe.
Yeah, the wants to believe. Yeah. The want to believes, or whatever we call them, want to believers.
So someone had written me and called the whole to the stars and all that stuff. They basically called it clickbait, and I thought that was perfect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. That's the phrase that it's the clickbait thing. It's to get you to, so that then and the people who play that game, it's like, see, I'm popular. I'm the one that everybody comes to, or look, everybody comes to us. We're the authority. When you do that Chicken Little thing constantly, and you're going to get a percentage of people that can't resist. And then the other part of it is people don't like to feel like they've been had. So I think that sometimes fuels the stubborn true believerism.
True.
I think there's some of these guys who came out way over enthusiastic and not critical thinkers at all about TTSA, that if push came to shove, they realized a while back, oh shoot, I hitched my enthusiasm wagon to these clowns and this is nothing. But they don't want to admit it. They're too embarrassed to admit it. And then there's the ones who claim that, I was an insider on this. I was contacted. I was asked, and then when you find out they weren't really. They volunteered whatever contact they had. And then that ended, but they didn't want it to end because it made them feel important. It made them feel like they were somebody and really involved in this, when actually they weren't, or they're not. And, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, particularly if you've been very vocal and smack talky about it.
And the thing is, too, I'm not a debunker per se.
No.
I approach everything with open-minded skepticism. I believe any of this stuff is possible. I believe people's stories. I don't always agree with their interpretations, but I'm not someone who goes, oh, you saw a weird light at night? Oh, yeah, I believe you. It was Venus. Unless it actually was.
Yeah. Hey, I'm with you there. The stuff I've written, the stuff I've gone on record saying, I buy into this, I buy into that. What I found specifically with the TTSA crowd is that because I'm a critical thinker where they're concerned, I've been accused of being jealous. I'm one of the old school who's jealous of TTSA and what they've accomplished. Yeah, they, with their $37.5 million deficit in, what they thought they were going to raise that they haven't.
Right.
They who have come out with Mylar balloons. This is a real UFO. Tom DeLonge's performance on Joe Rogan. Yeah, I'm jealous of that. But that's what I was accused of, simply because I said, hey guys, look at this critically,
Yeah.
and I poked fun at it. You're absolutely right. When you come out as big and splashy as they tried to, and it ends up being a Mylar balloon, and it ends up with the stuff we just mentioned, you're going to get laughed at.
It's the alien mummy again.
Yes, the Nazca mummy.
Yep.
Oh, geez.
So we are just about out of time, but tell people where they can find you.
If they want to, they might not want. My books are, and they're print on demand only. I think a printed book is worth the short wait, but they're very nicely done at lulu.com. If you just put Walter Bosley in the search box, Lulu puts out an excellent product, excellent books. All my books are there, the nonfiction and the pulp fiction that I like to write for fun. If you want to interact with me, you can find me at Twitter or Facebook. I also have the Walter Bosley channel at YouTube, and I wear it like a badge of honor. But go there, subscribe, but do not expect me to do a spastic hyper video every day or every week. That's not me. That's not my style. I will go 2 weeks without doing a video, but I'll do 2 or 3 in a row when I have something to say.
That's how it should be.
But you'll find, and if you go back through the history there, you'll find lots of fun videos, entertaining videos, and informative. So check me out at the Walter Bosley channel at YouTube, lulu.com for my books, and Twitter and Facebook for interaction if you desire.
Well, thank you very much, Walter.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I always love talking with you.
And I want to give an extra special thanks to some people who have gone above and beyond helping me out recently. Allison Cook, Dominic O'Malley, Susan Sabota, Patricia Giaquinta, and Arif Akhtar, as well as all the patrons pledging $10 or more: Super Inframan, Andy McNamara, Charles Beauregard, Craig Cisternos, Scott Morris Everett, Robert Groom, Riker and Stark, Russell Wilcoxon, Sasha Lorg, Christopher Vaughn, Samantha, Carla Mahoney, John Eddy, Chris, Roland Belstedt, Savannah Barlow, Mark Brady, William Lovelace, Kevin Schreck, Alex Bose, Jose Alatorre, Ben, and Alfred Tuttle. Thank you all so very much. All right, so there is an extra, pretty lengthy segment with Walter for Patreons only, so you can check that out if you're a Patreon. And I have a Fringe News show coming up next week that's already been recorded. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about a few of the subjects from tonight with some different perspectives from Shirley Black and Red Pill Junkie. And so I hope you guys don't get tired of hearing about this stuff. I was a little afraid to get into it again, but everyone wanted to kind of get their opinions in, and I think it went well. So don't be discouraged when you see the Fringe News show deals with like the Corey Goode and Skinwalker documentary in part. It's not the whole show, and it's goes in different directions. We'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.